Hey guys, it's Jerry with Hillbilly Horror Stories. I'm going to leave you here with a little snippet of one of our latest episodes. If you like what you hear and you want to hear the rest of the episode or any of our other episodes, just go over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, iHeart, anywhere that you get podcasts. Subscribe to Hillbilly Horror Stories, and you can listen to as many episodes as you want, absolutely free of charge. And please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and click to be notified. So Tracy, obviously we support our police officers and we talk about them on a regular basis.
Of course.
And we talked about...
Well, that's Peter Brady.
Stop. Everybody goes through puberty in their 50s. What's the problem? But anyway, we've talked in some of these shows before about police officers, when it comes to the paranormal, are some of the very most credible witnesses. You know, you could have just an average Joe Blow saying, oh, this is what I saw, but it seems to come more when you've got somebody from authority figure, like in the military, a police officer saying they saw it. Mm-hmm. To me, it just makes a lot more credible of the story. We've had a couple of shows on here that we pointed out the police officers being the main witnesses, such as the 966 Lindley Street episode that we did, that city up in Connecticut.
Oh,
That's the one that was obviously a case that I'm surprised hasn't made it to the big screen yet, but it was one of the Warrens cases. Mm-hmm. That one had a lot of police officers as witnesses, also firemen. So that I think that made that the most credible story out of all of them that we've maybe covered just for that reason. Now, it's the same can be said about the Bayeka case. That was the next Netflix movie, Veronica, that we covered, the true story behind it. It had police officers that witnessed several things within the house that they couldn't explain, including shadow figures or stuff like that. So anyway, so we talked about putting a show together in the past with law enforcement officers telling their own stories. The problem was, obviously, it's tough to get people that are willing to go on record and tell it. Anybody tell you off the air that, oh, this cool thing happened. They don't want to come on the air and do it because they don't want their credibility ruined. They don't want people to think they're a crackpot or something like that in their profession. So it's been hard putting that thing together. So what I did was decided that I was ready to do that. And if I couldn't find people ready to come on the air, I was just going to put some stories together, do a little research, and that's what I did. So most of these are fairly short, but I thought they were still interesting to say the least. So as you can imagine, with these people remaining anonymous, and in these stories I've got names, but I don't have cities. So I guess they kind of made it a little somewhat anonymous. But.
Yeah.
All right, here's the first one. This is by Meredith Shearman, and she said that she worked as a 911 not a detective, but operator.
I've always... Is that like a dispatcher?
She was a dispatcher.
I've always wanted to do that.
But she was an actual police officer. Apparently, they didn't have just a full-time dispatcher.
She helped out.
She was a police officer that did that as well. And she said she took a call several years ago. The family making the call said that their teenage daughter was possessed. According to the family, there was no possibility of drugs or alcohol or mental health issues. Needless to say, Meredith was not buying any of this for a second. She just kind of rolled her eyes at it. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
While she was on the phone with the family, there were some family members actually holding the girl down. And Meredith said she could hear two people screaming in the background. She asked the caller to ask whoever was screaming in the background to please stop. The caller said, "It's my daughter." Meredith said, "I know it's your daughter, but I'm talking about the other person that's talking at the same time as her. Can you tell them to stop?" Meredith was shocked to hear the woman say, "It's her. Both voices are my daughter."
Oh, wow.
Meredith said that both of these voices were talking over each other at the same time. She'd been doing this for 25 years at the time, but this was the creepiest thing that she had ever heard. Meredith said she knows of man's inhumanity and the horrible things that people do to each other, but this was a different kind of evil. She was clearly hearing a young girl's voice and an adult male yelling back. at the same time. She couldn't understand the language, but there were definitely two different voices. The family swore that both voices were coming from the girl at the same time. Meredith said that her lieutenant later listened to the tape and said, "Do you ever wonder?" And Meredith cut him off and said, "Yes. Yes, I do."
Oh.
So,
Whoa.
how freaky is that?
Yes. I mean, what in the world would you think if you were on the other end of that call?
I mean, you would probably think that's not possible and you can't see them. It's not like a video call. So you would automatically probably assume that they're still not telling you the truth. But sometimes you just have a feeling, a gut feeling. And my guess is that's what went on with Meredith. She probably had a gut feeling that, no, I've been doing this a long time and something about this is just off.
Dang, I wish we knew the ending of it.
Yeah, I am curious. And I did try to look up a little bit because I am curious what ended up happening. Did they send the police out? What happened? I have no clue. So
I'd be better sending a priest out, not no police.
yeah.
Let's take a really quick break before this next story.
This story is from a gentleman by the name of Rob McGinley. Rob responded to a suicide as the lead detective. A male had hung himself in a tree in his backyard.
Aw.
Both detectives checked the residence and both of the doors were locked with a deadbolt.
The deadbolt was locked too?
Yes. Rob made a call for some entry tools and he made a call to his supervisor because the man's girlfriend was nowhere to be found. She was unaccounted for, and they lived together. So they thought maybe this could be a possible murder-suicide. Rob and several police officers were standing at the back door on the south side of the house. The entrance had been checked multiple times by multiple officers while they were waiting on the entry tools to arrive. Rob looks at the door, and he sees that there is now a gap where the deadbolt once was. He checked the door, and it's now open. Keep in mind that there had been someone at this door the entire time, and so there couldn't have been anybody unlocked the door
Right.
or, from the inside or the outside because they would have heard it or seen it.
Well, sure.
They clear the residence. No one's inside. They even cleared the attic space. Inside the door that was quote-unquote magically opened were several notes from the suicide victim to his family members. Several of the officers were walking outside waiting on the man's next of kin to arrive. One of them tried to walk back into the house, but the door was once again deadbolted.
The same door?
Yes. Now let's keep in mind that the deadbolt can only be locked
From the inside?
or with a key.
Oh, yeah. I guess that would have to have a key, of course.
No one had keys. The two co-detectives now were discussing how they were going to have to call again and ask for entry tools that they had called and canceled because they didn't need,
They canceled before they got there?
Yeah, they canceled before they got there.
That's
and
annoying.
They got to call again and get these tools again. Well, during the conversation, the door unlocked right in front of them.
Oh, man.
They cleared the house again. Once again, no one was inside. Rob and his partner did not go back into the house the rest of the day.
Well, that is crazy.
So think about that situation. You've got a house that's completely locked up, deadbolted, can only be unlocked from the inside, or if you're outside, it's got to have the key. Nobody has a key. It was locked, then unlocked, and locked again, and then unlocked again.
I wonder what the purpose of that was, though. I mean, even if there was a ghost in there, what is the purpose
Well,
of...
I'm thinking that maybe it was the spirit of the man who hung himself, and maybe he wanted to make sure they could get inside to find those notes.
Oh. And then once they had the notes, then they didn't need to be in there, I guess, maybe.
That's probably my guess.
No. I'm sorry he did that.
But then he
That's
opened
sad.
it up again at the end, and so they just didn't go back in it again.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
This one is from an officer by the name of Chuck Phail, Pheil. Chuck answered a welfare check call between 2 and 3 a.m. one night. We mentioned the other day on one of the Hillbilly Shorts we did, we were doing some of these extra stories, that so many of these police encounters that I have ran across were all around the 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning thing. So something about that 3 a.m. thing that just always stands out when it comes to the paranormal. True. So anyway, he takes his call between 2 and 3 a.m. The call is for an elderly woman who lived next door to the caller. The caller said that the lady was in her 90s and she hadn't been seen in a while.
Oh.
At the time of the call, there was a bad thunderstorm happening, but currently there was no rain. It was just the thunder.
Right.
And the wind and stuff. The officer decided to go to the woman's house who made the call first because he was curious as to why she decided to make a welfare check call at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It seemed kind of odd. It's a strange time for a welfare call.
Of course.
Especially, well, you know, they'll get welfare calls, but usually there's some kind of a disturbance or something.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, maybe they've heard something, some yelling or screaming going on. They want to go, what's going on? So the lady explains to him that she hasn't seen her neighbor in weeks. And she's in her 90s, so obviously she's concerned. She further explains that she has called to get no answer. She's knocked on the door, got no answer there. And she's starting to think that she's probably deceased and has been for some time.
Oh, no.
So the cop and the caller go next door to the neighbor's house. First thing the cop notices is that there's 3 inches of dust on the car and the mail is piling up. He notices there is no lights on in the house anywhere. Not that he can see. He first walks to the side door and knocks with his flashlight. He knocked loud enough so even an elderly person that might have some hearing difficulties would have been able to hear him. After a few minutes of not getting an answer, he walks to the backyard. He's checking all of the windows. Everything seems to be okay. He turns to the lady who made the call and says, "Hey, I don't really see anything out of the ordinary here."
Except for 3 inches of dust and all her mail piling up.
Right, but that's not necessarily out of the ordinary. She
Well,
could
that
be gone,
could have gone somewhere,
Yeah.
I guess.
They walk to the front of the house. The window blinds are open. And he can see a little bit of a glow coming from the windows. Now, the problem is these windows are about 7 feet off the ground, so he can't just look straight in. They're kind of tall. So he can't peek inside. And so the caller runs next door and grabs a bucket for the officer to stand on. Chuck climbs up on the bucket, and he can see into the living room. The glow is coming from the TV, which is on a blue screen. I guess like when, you know, the VCR or something, you've got it on.
Yeah.
The glow was bright enough, though, that the officer didn't need to use his flashlight to be able to see all around the living room. He first looked at the floor to make sure that no one had fallen and was laying on the floor. He then checked the sofa and recliner. Still didn't see anybody. Now, he could see the telephone and the base, and he could see the lights flashing, showing that there was some missed calls and some messages, but the phone was still there. He used his flashlight to shine through the window, and now he could see down the hall, and he saw that there was an open door down the hall. But still no sign of anybody. So Chuck turns around, and he tells the 911 caller, everything looks okay, and nothing is disturbed in the house. He turns around, and an elderly woman is now looking right back at him, face to face, with her face right up against the glass of the window.
Holy crap. I would have crapped my pants.
Chuck said that he couldn't breathe. It felt like that he had been hit in the chest with a baseball bat. It freaked him out so much. He fell backwards off of the bucket, and he hit the ground hard. The caller rushed over to help him up. Well, Chuck pushed the collar off of him and hopped right back on that bucket because he had to see inside. He said his heart was pounding so fast, but he just had to see what was going on up there. Instinct caused him to reach for his gun as he looked through the window. He said what he saw was a frail little old lady in a long nightgown with her back to him. He said she slightly turned her head and looked at him, then slowly walked down the hall till she got out of view. Chuck said he was completely unnerved by what had just happened. He got down off the bucket, looked at the caller. Obviously, she was staring with a confused look because she don't know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
All Chuck could say is that he saw her. At this point, the rain really started to fall. Chuck said that he began to walk back to his car. He turned and looked at the caller and said, "Don't come back here." Chuck said he got into his car, drove back to the police department. He never found out about the lady that lived there. He said he knew that the caller never called back, and he knows that the house has different tenants now. He said some things are just better left unknown.